All right. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Dr. Politics and the Political Architect Show. My name is Jackie Saxton, and I am here with Dwight Patel, Marcus Alzona, Mark Unkefer, and Don Irvine. We are missing Ryan Nidak this week. He's been put on a 1-week timeout because he was caught in a Georgia convenience store without a mask on. We'll get more on that next week when he's back. Don,
Shame
what
on
do
you,
we
Dr.
have
Nidak.
this week?
All right, that's a great lead-in. Anyway,
And he's a doctor too. You know, that's what makes it worse. He's a doctor.
Yeah, he should have known better.
I mean, come on, Dr. Nidak, how do you expect your patients
How do you? Yeah.
I mean, how are his patients going to follow his orders?
Really?
Yeah, he went to Georgia just so he could do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, what we're facing right now, right? I mean, so now, when I watch CNN, all I see is coronavirus pandemic, America in crisis. You know, we have no leadership, at all, and they're just talking about the number of cases that are spiking. They're not talking about really how many hospitalizations or deaths per se. They want that top line number, as we have talked about before. But the number that, Florida had 9,000 cases, so it was apparently a record. We had 40,000 cases nationwide. But the death rate still is fairly reasonable, if you can use that terminology at all. But Florida and Texas have decided that they're going to close the bars. They want to try to mitigate this a little bit. Mark, I mean, you've watched a lot of this from Montgomery County to all over. I mean, what's your take about this? I mean, is the media, are they overdoing this situation?
Well, it's interesting because, as you talked about, we don't know as much about the age or health of the people who are testing positive. If they're in nursing homes, we got a real problem. But if they're out on the beach and bars and what have you,
Mark.
Sorry,
that's only a problem for New York because that's where Cuomo and De Blasio likes to send old people to nursing homes to die.
Well, you know what?
They're kind of like the French of the 1990s when
Marcus, mute.
I've got the mute button control.
Mark, you say we don't really know much about the demographics, but they're actually saying they're starting to see larger reports of people around my age, in the late teens into their 30s.
Well, the bottom line is we're really not worried about you.
Right. I mean, for us, it's probably just a sneeze and you move on.
So
Right.
I saw some figures actually. I guess they were supposedly from the Florida Department of Health. In April and May, the deaths were the average age, in Florida was 60. In June, average age 40. It's significantly lowered. So the people, at least according to this infographic taken from the Florida Department of Health, it's significantly lower. That's what we're seeing, and I think it's for. Let's see I'm not sure if the cases are. Oh no, okay. So it is for confirmed cases versus the death rate. So it had additional information, but
yeah, and there is. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean that's it. I mean it's younger people.
Yeah, but there is it's so hard because people hear, oh, these agents are testing positive. Their brain automatically thinks positive with a horrifyingly bad case that's going to land them in the ICU when really it's reporting positive cases, but it's not reporting on severity of the case.
And what are the hospitalization rates in Florida right now? They're not spiking. We don't have all these people.
I've read otherwise, and I read that's why they're starting to reclose everything down.
But I mean,
because they're starting to see it take a toll on the hospitals.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When young folks, here's the thing. I think people are overly panicked. People were overly panicked. I mean, the shutdown should have been really 3 weeks. We're responsible people. Much as we hate wearing face masks inside of stores, except Dr. Nidak who defied that order. We're wearing face masks when we go inside of a store. We hate it. We grumble about it. It's kind of like the seatbelt laws in the 70s when they first came around. Everybody hated putting on a seatbelt, but they did it because why? It's better than dying or going through a windshield. Same way, and this will pass. We're really close to a cure. I think by 2021, this time next year, we'll have, there's AstraZeneca has a very promising vaccine in trials right now. And by the end of the year, they think they'll have a billion dosages for vaccines.
Fauci said he's not 100% certain, but very confident that there's going to be a vaccine by the end of the year.
Yeah, and that means by next year, this time, I mean, we could be talking about, celebrating the cure, and only anti-vaxxers will be the people that we have to worry that'll be getting COVID-19 at that point.
I would be shocked. I mean, obviously this is very tough to put through, but if there's going to be some kind of mandate that people get vaccinated, like if they want to go back to school, they have that long list of vaccines your kid has to get to go to public schools. I have a feeling that's going to be on there, something similar to that, and it could be something that workplaces require as well.
See,
I can totally see the paranoia there that we don't want you in a cubicle less than 6 feet from a person if you don't have this vaccine.
but here's the thing: okay, let's say you go to a workplace. There's 100 people there that are vaccinated, and 5 people decide they don't want to take the vaccine. Guess what? You 100 folks, you're going to do just fine if they get COVID-19. You're going to.
But that's not necessarily true, because it's the same as the flu shot. It doesn't guarantee you're not going to get the flu.
True.
Yeah.
But it'd be milder. I mean, let me tell you, as the flu shot goes, every time I've gotten the flu shot, I've gotten the flu. Years I don't take it, I never get the flu.
Yeah, Mark, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, I mean, this is the issue with vaccinations is that there's, depending on the year and the quality of the vaccination, there are, as many as 50% of the people for whom it's not effective. The numbers suggest that you need a much higher number to reach that herd immunity phase or status where diseases don't spread as fast because there's so many people who can't get it or won't get it. So we don't know. I mean,
but there's so much hype about coronavirus in particular. I think that we would see a lot higher vaccination rates than we would typically see for the flu, except for the crazy group of people who think that the vaccine is actually just Bill Gates trying to put microchips inside of everybody. And yes, I know people actual people who think that.
Hey, Jackie, it's the Bilderbergers and the Illuminati.
Well,
we should have that guy on the. No, anyway.
We should have Chris Haas on. His dad is Rick Haas.
No, he's not.
I'll say this about the whole, the mask, non-mask thing, or just even how people's behavior has been. I mean, I've been going to the gym. My gym, Gold's Gym, just up the street, reopened on Saturday morning, and there were, I don't know, maybe 15 people in line or whatever, waiting to get in, kind of chomping at the bit to get in. We had a temperature check. We asked a couple of questions. We could go in. At that time, initially, they were not requiring us to wear masks while working out. Apparently, they got, I guess, Montgomery County or somebody squealed on them. Yeah, and now they require the mask during workout, but they're not really overly vigilant about it. I mean, if you put it, if you're trying to breathe and put it below your nose a little bit, nobody's really bothering you. And the machines are spaced out. But the fact of the matter is that there aren't that many people going to the gym. I mean, I have been a pretty faithful gym goer over at this place for a while, and so far I have seen about 3 of the regulars, the people that I had seen before on a regular basis, coming back on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. But the rest of them, I haven't seen them. I know a lot of people are in that older age range. I begin to wonder whether or not they're taking precautionary measures right now too, to say we're not really sure what's going on. Now the gym is actually returning to normal hours starting Monday. They're going to open at 5 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock. And I think the classes and the training might resume. And that'll be an interesting challenge for the gyms, because we're now talking about, if you have a Zumba class or things like that, how many people are you going to put in a classroom, now with hot, sweaty people, how you social distance them. But so far, people seem to have been kind of self-selecting at this point. There have never been more than about 10 cars in the parking lot every time I've gone so far. But the gym has had to take measures of having a person at the door scanning you, asking questions, extra cleaning costs and things like that. So, my bigger question here to everybody though is that, we've been talking off and on about V-shaped recovery or U-shape or W or whatever, but what's happening now? How do you think this is affecting the economy? We saw the unemployment, job filing still at that 1.5 million level. It's not dropping down as fast as we had hoped it would. What is the longer term, outlook for the economy, or at least the short term between now and the election? I mean,
well, Don, I think on the gym front, you're seeing 2 camps here. You're seeing the people who are still kind of iffy about going back to the gym because of spread. Then you're seeing the people like me who are saying, I am not going to the gym if I need to work out with a mask on because I will be face down on the floor in 10 minutes or less.
Yeah. And by the way, hey, Don, we should take down a treadmill down to the county council offices and challenge any of our members of the county council or county executive Elric to get on the treadmill 5 minutes with a mask on.
Right.
Actually, maybe 10.
My wife made a thinner mask for me.
Good.
Yeah, which helps a lot.
I was saying, in terms of the economy, I mean, I read a startling article today, again, I don't know how much truth is to this, that 50% of the restaurants in Yelp have now been marked permanently closed. And I think that's where you're seeing with the economy here is as much as there are businesses that are just furloughing people, there are just as many that are going out under for good. And that's where we're really going to see the hit to the economy.
And here's the thing, a lot of these businesses, and here's a couple of things. One, some of these businesses have actually, a lot of people say, oh, look, JCPenney's is going out of business, Needless Markup is going out of business. And, these businesses were these businesses were in trouble before this happened. Some of these restaurant chains, the restaurant chains will be fine. We're seeing small businesses like the Rockville Bagel Shop, which is a victim of Mark Elric's lockdown stuff. They went out of business during COVID, and that was a place where you had lines.
Bagel City?
Yeah, Bagel City, yeah. Where you had lines outside on a Saturday morning to get in there. Because I've gone there Saturday mornings to get bagels, and there's a line. You have to wait like 15, 20 minutes, It's like going to the old cozies,
a bagel shortage.
Something.
That's detrimental to me.
Well, when cozies left our market, there's, I think, 2 in DC that are still around, but you can't find a square bagel anywhere.
When life will really be hit home for Dwight is when there's no pizza places around.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
It would be terrible.
Dwight's world would be upside down.
The original Three Brothers is gone for good. So I don't know where I'm going to eat when I go to Goddard. It's like it's a food desert right there. There's nothing there. It's like you're in the middle of a food desert. Now I'm going to have to go all the way to Laurel or someplace like that to Blaze Pizza,
So why are people blaming this on Bill Gates and not Jeff Bezos? That's what I don't get.
Jeff Bezos is rolling in it right now.
Exactly.
Everyone's living on Amazon.
It sounds to me like if you're going to do a conspiracy theory, that's really who you ought to.
But you know what? He's hiring so many people to support the higher numbers from coronavirus. But he's come out and said that those extra hundreds of thousands of people that he's hiring are going to get to keep their jobs after all this is over, and that's huge.
Yeah, after all the small businesses have been closed.
Right.
Yeah. Except you have to work.
Yeah.
But you know what? But people aren't going to paint him as the villain because he's offering jobs.
Yeah, but even though look, okay.
The villain.
It's like you take any small. Let's say you take a small city area where you have, you got a mobster that's running the show. He goes around and doles out money. People like the guy. Even though the guy's a mobster. It's like Jeff Bezos. He wants to take your money. He advocates for higher taxes. He's part of that whole giving away your wealth crap, and he wants to impose everyone.
Well, he did give away half his money to his ex-wife.
Right, exactly.
That is fine.
It's not like that's hurt him a whole lot.
Yeah.
My point is, look, it's his choice. Don't freaking mandate that on people to give away half your wealth. I'm sorry, no.
That's just something we agree with as conservatives as a whole.
And there should be no death tax, quite frankly. I am sick of the death tax. I think the death tax is evil. Why the hell should the government get their mitts on people's hard-earned money they worked for years and years for? And then when they die, the government comes in and say, oh, we're going to take half of everything that's left.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry that I had the audacity to pass away.
So put that in your will that you refuse to have your heirs pay the death tax.
If your last will and testament, is to not pay the death tax, do you not have to pay it?
I've got a trust set up the same way my dad had the trust set up, and they're not getting a dime from me. Every last penny is good. All they're going to get is an account with $2,000 in it, and good luck. So, that's already below the exemption.
So my understanding is that the Maryland law is such that if you pass away, if you don't have a will, they assume that you want 50% of your assets to go to the state.
Why would they assume?
No, that's
That
not true.
doesn't sound right. That's
everybody
crazy.
Everybody should be on the phone with Michael Collins. And,
Are you doing commercial for Michael Collins?
And do a not Michael Collins, Republican from Baltimore City. This is Michael Collins from Virginia. He does the Living Cross. He does a great job, And frankly, he's one of the best in the business, and everyone should have a trust. Even Rick Edelman, would say that too.
Before I want to move on here, but I do want to ask you guys one last thing though, because of where Montgomery County is with all this stuff, is that where are we going? Do the cases spiking nationwide and these other things that are happening nationwide? Is it going to keep Elrich in the place where he can say we're just going to sit here for a while and the regulations that we have in effect will stay in effect. We're not going to move to the next phase for months.
I think he's going to follow what the rest of Maryland is doing, albeit at a slower pace. But I think if we start to see what's happening in Texas and in Florida happen in Maryland, he is not going to waste a single second to shut everything back down.
I mean, the numbers are in Maryland compared with the other states we mentioned are very, very different.
But here's the thing. This is all.
By the way, can I just say, Dwight, I was a little concerned on one level. You were expressing robust optimism about COVID.
Yeah.
That if you weren't going to get it, if you got it, you were going to live and what have you.
I agree.
And then I heard you rail against the death tax.
Yeah.
So that doesn't, and also to rail against the need to make appropriate preparations to avoid to take care of your estate and to do taxes. That's off message. That sounds like you're really kind of nervous.
No, I'm not nervous at all. It's just, Mark Elrick may have a ride-on bus driver run me over. Better yet, he might run me over with his $80,000 SUV.
To Dwight's defense, I think he would have made the same rant about the death tax whether COVID had happened or not.
And here's the thing: we're all going. I hate to say it, until we come with immortality.
But it was on his mind. That's my.
Dwight's gonna be one of those like heads from Futurama when he dies, where they put the head in a jar. And just
no. I'm gonna be put in a robot. I'll be a robot.
All right, so I want to move on to this next subject. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this because I don't think any of us are necessarily like big NASCAR fans. But I wanted to bring this up, this whole Bubba Wallace thing, because I think it is a prime example of where the media, has really done something to me that's been really egregious. So we have Bubba Wallace, the only full-time black race car driver on the NASCAR circuit, and in the garage at Talladega for this Geico race that they had on Sunday that they postponed to Monday because of the weather.
Not a sponsor.
They found, right, not a sponsor. They found there was a pull rope in the garage, and the part of it was shaped, as a noose. Now, from what I had originally seen, was that Bubba Wallace actually didn't really see that or complain about it. Somebody else brought it to his attention, and then the whole thing kind of blew up. NASCAR reacted, saying, "We're going to investigate this, and whoever's responsible will be banned, will be expelled from NASCAR." The FBI got involved, and by Tuesday, with all this thing about racism, because here we are, we were doing George Floyd and Rayshard Brooks, and then comes Bubba Wallace. It's like 1, 2, 3. It's like they were looking for something for the next victim of racism in America, and they had it. This very telegenic young black guy, racing for a NASCAR in a very white sport, which is filled with all these Confederate flags, by patrons, by the customers and whatnot, fans. But when the FBI concluded their investigation, they said, no, it was not a hate crime, that there's video evidence of this rope being there since October of 2019. So that was a good 8 months ago. And maybe it was fashioned like a noose, but it's not a hate crime. So one of my problems with this is that one of the podcasts I listen to is a show called Around the Horn. And sometimes they're doing the regular broadcast on ESPN. Sometimes they're just doing the podcast. It just depends upon the day. And I was listening the other day, and so this was just after this all had broken, and they had put a person on there from ESPN, someone I hadn't heard of before, but her name is Elle Duncan. She's a black sportscaster or anchor for ESPN, and that was her debut show. And they pretty much gave her almost the entire show to rail about this, whole thing, to the point where she didn't just go and say this is a hate crime. She said this was an act of terror.
That's the problem. This is all what the left has been doing since. Remember Jesse Smollett? Everybody ran with the fact, oh, poor Jesse Smollett, and he paid those people to do it. Then we had the Covington kids and that fake,
Nick Sandman.
Yeah, and you had that fake Native American or fake Vietnam vet, who said he was a Vietnam vet, and it turned out he wasn't one of those. And they made up. And what did CNN do a retraction? Maybe a little something.
I think they're getting their checkbook out.
Yeah,
but you're right, Dwight. I mean, this is part of my point here is that this was shown to not be a hate crime. The FBI basically said this, and the media has not really talked about this as much. It was the bigger story was it was a noose and a hate crime. As soon as they determined it wasn't a hate crime, no one came back, really to say nobody. We apologize for this.
It goes back to Mike Deaver. What office does he go to get his reputation back? Where do these people who are maligned, like Nick Sandman, where does he go to get his reputation back? He'll be in the history books as the guy, and who writes the lefty, when they write the history books, and they're going to say, white kid from Covington, Catholic school, harassed.
Because the liberal media companies get no ratings unless they're stirring outrage.
Exactly.
And you see it almost on the right too, is that this whole thing that's been going on with Tucker Carlson is so radical, he's crazy, blah, blah, blah. He's had the highest ratings the past few weeks that he's ever had.
Right. And, and they're once again, Tucker, as he's been a target of the left on advertising boycott, right? So he's yet another Fox target that the left has gone after to say, pressure the advertisers not to advertise on the program. What a lot of these guys, what they don't understand really is that a lot of these ads are bought for the network. Mm-hmm. And then they're parsed out to the they say, well, they based on what they pay, you pay more for Tucker than you do for, say, Laura or whatever. But, really what's all going to happen with a lot of those advertisers is just that they're just going to shift those ads to other programs. They're not really withdrawing, per se, from Fox News. They're just going to be moving around. Now, the My Pillow and I think the Rosalind Gold thing, I think William Devane and the Gold guys and the Mike Linden and the My Pillow, they stuck around. They said, absolutely, we're not leaving. We're not abandoning Tucker. But overall, it doesn't really hurt Fox, and I don't find that strategy to be all that effective in the long run.
But I want to stay on Fox News for a little bit because I'm hearing a lot of interesting things. First of all, President Trump has been turning on Fox a lot. There's a lot of other people saying that Fox is becoming too liberal, and I know for a fact that obviously Fox was bought by Disney, which is a liberal company. No,
Fox News is not.
No, Fox News wasn't. Right, I thought so. Yeah, but I do know that a lot of the station coordinators and a lot of the producers there now actually are left-leaning. That's part of why Judge Jeanine was temporarily taken off the air and everything like that.
Yeah, the Murdoch kids are also lefties, too. Rupert Murdoch's kids are running the show now.
So are we going to start seeing more, I don't know if censorship is the right word for it, but more left-leaning content in what is really one of the few right-wing or right-leaning news networks?
I don't think we will, because I tell you, being the go-to network for right-of-center folks, Fox News has made a lot of money doing that. They read numbers. They look at CNN's numbers, I'm surprised they're able to afford to pay for Mika and Joe's haircuts, these days.
I mean,
you really raise a good point, which is that we're also seeing the same phenomena with Facebook and certainly with Twitter as well, where the tech platforms are in a. We talked about in the show earlier this week that the other show,
Direct Line.
Direct Line.
Watch it every Wednesday, 7:30.
Right. The tech platforms are in a unique position. They're private. They're certainly able legally to do editorial control. It really seems as though there's a need for a more, how shall I say, First Amendment friendly platform to be able to communicate, because I'm not quite sure that we can rely on Facebook and go on with the others and Google to be as neutral or to be as willing to stand up to the sort of cancel culture that goes on.
All right, well, I'm calling dibs right now because we as Republicans believe in your First Amendment rights. We may not agree with your opinion, but we'll defend to the death your right to have it. we're going to start our own social media platform and we're going to rake in the money.
Yeah. Hey, here's the thing. And this, the whole cancel culture stuff, it's gotten like to the point where, people are being, it's like gotten to the point where, while it's affecting certain people in Hollywood, not everyone, because as you know, what's his name? The late night guy who
Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel, who was in blackface. Now he has the audacity to criticize those who criticize him for doing blackface.
They tried to go after JoJo Siwa. I doubt any of you guys know who that is. She's a 16-year-old. She got famous through Instagram, through social media, through YouTube. And there's a bunch of people calling her out for what they're calling blackface. But really, in one of her music videos, she was dressed up like a monkey as an animal. And they're all calling her out for blackface. This is as like a 16-year-old. She was on Dance Moms. This is a 16-year-old girl.
That's amazing, though. I mean, so one thing about Fox, and I do want to get to Dwight's point about cancel culture and ask a question there too, is that, Trump, yes, Jackie, you're right. Trump has definitely been hitting Fox. I do think that, with President Trump, there's a little bit of a strategy there. I mean, he knows, as Dwight has alluded to, is that Fox is, by far the runaway #1 cable news network. There is no way that Trump cannot, deal with Fox News. He needs them. So even when he had this interview with David Brody from CBN the other day, and he blasted Fox News, he tried to pick his places there, right? He took, the Weekend Show, a couple of things like that. But he said, they have wonderful people like Sean Hannity, like Laura, like Fox and Friends. So, he's straddling the fence a little bit because he knows that he still needs them out there for things. So and I think it's a little bit of a way for President Trump just to kind of needle them a little bit, not like everybody's going to be flocking to One American News or Newsmax.
But he does not have a lot of friends in the media, and he needs to keep the friends he gets. As long as he doesn't come after my boy Greg, we're good.
But here's the thing about that's interesting. You mentioned Newsmax and One America. I tell you, Newsmax. If you remember the old NET. If you watch Newsmax, it resembles the old NET down to the quality of broadcast. It's like, wow, this is just like watching NET back in the days, And I think Paul Whitework was ahead of his time with NET. I mean, if he did it today, he'd probably be on one of the cable systems somewhere,
I remember seeing.
And he was trying to launch that as an alternative. Yeah. He was before his time in that sense. I think there's a good point there.
I remember seeing an article. It was a number of years ago, in the early 2010s, I think. But when CBS was going through a transition, or maybe it was being sold by Viacom, or I can't remember its corporate backings, but it was suggesting that a smart business move for CBS at the time would have been to stop covering things in a left-leaning, like follow the Fox News model, because that's actually where the majority of the Americans were, like center or center right. That was like the center of the country. So it would have been a more prudent financial decision to follow that route, but they didn't, of course. But
right,
it's still
actually, I do want to point out one thing, is that I think that we have to be fair, at least somewhat unbiased, is that one of the things that President Trump said in this interview was that he said when he was criticizing Fox is that it was his base, it was his people that made Fox #1, which is incorrect, because Fox has been the top cable news network for many, many years. But I love this is President Trump just throw it out there, because a lot of people won't realize it. I think there are people in the base that think, we helped propel Fox #1. But Fox has been #1 for a long time now.
I mean, Fox has been #1 since pretty much, I guess I want to say, even back to the Clinton days.
But that's a good segue, though, because it's another thing I'm interested in, is if you're looking at the polling numbers, Trump's not doing so great. Now, obviously, I take the polls with a grain of salt, because look at what 2016 brought us. But does the ratings on Fox have any indication about Trump's chances this year? Because I don't think it's going to be a landslide. I don't think anybody thinks it's going to be a landslide.
I don't think it's going to be a landslide, but this is what's going to happen, okay? And I don't think we should rest on our laurels, but we have to work hard to get the president elected. But let me tell you, when you go in there, and it's going to be, I tell you, those new commercials the Trump campaign has going after Joe Biden and his, the missteps, the missed talks, missed speeches, whatever, Creepy Joe, when he forgets where he is, and so it's going to say, do we want? Sure, Donald Trump is a little nutty. He's out here, he goes blah like that, but at least he knows what day of the week it is. At least he knows. Nobody has to remind him to take his pills, and stuff like that.
He never knows what town he's in.
Just to remember that the polls in 2016 were not as off as we sometimes.
No, well, here's also the thing. This is
just remember what. Just remember they showed a couple of points majority lead by Hillary Clinton. What they missed was the swing in the sort of the inside straight that the Trump campaign was able to do in a couple of states to get the necessary electoral vote.
But I always wonder what their numbers are, because I've never taken a single one of these polls.
Well, here's the thing. When I used to work for Tony Fabrizio, you could gin up numbers to show them. All this is making a few more calls in New York City, Philadelphia, South Chicago, and that's how you run the numbers. I could make the same poll have Trump running away with it by just calling Sioux Falls, calling
that doesn't do anybody any good. No, what I'm saying is the polls were not that far off.
Yeah, I'm saying these polls that show Joe Biden, I find it really hard to believe that Americans actually elect creepy Joe Biden as president. This guy hates South Asians. He doesn't like Indians. He wants to end busing.
He doesn't like Jews.
Yeah, he's an anti-Semite. He goes and he basically is just a horrible, and he's a plagiarist. And it's funny. It also speaks of judgment. When you're going to plagiarize a British politician, wouldn't you pick Margaret Thatcher over that has-been Leo Kinnock when you're plagiarizing?
One of the problems, though, that I think some people on the conservative social media will say is that you've seen over the last 4 years, you've seen big tech sort of deplatform all of the president's supporters, his most strong supporters, and communities, whether it's on Reddit, whether it's, wherever it is, especially on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube to a lesser extent. So if what everyone is hearing, if they're successful at this sort of deplatforming, and what the majority of the population is hearing is always that it's the president's fault or that it's the GOP's fault, then what are they going to do? I mean, we have to be careful in that it is possible to be surprised about this, because as people get more segregated, if we sort of concede the mainstream discussion to the far left, then that's the only message. If that's the only message that a whole bunch of people are getting, that's a problem. Then that's a danger.
Especially younger voters or more uninformed voters. But there's so many times where I think about, the people living in more rural areas, the people who don't use Facebook, the people who aren't posting their political opinions online, do we still remain the silent majority?
Well, I think there is a vast, Marcus and I went to the same high school. There's a number of our friends, Marcus, that you and I both know, who are afraid to tell people that they're Republicans just because
I was in college.
These are like 40-some-year-old folks, and they don't want to be ostracized by people from our class or left, because the left is very vocal out there. They're very intolerant of dissent in views. If you agree with them on giving away money and taxing the rich and all that, you're fine. But the minute you say you're a Republican, it's like, I
agree. There's a lot of people out there that's going to fall into that, the silent majority, what have you. But the danger is also that you have the silent majority, but then you have people who are just like, I just want to get along and get by. And if the common sense out there is that common political discourse is that, we have to ban the police, we have to defund the police and all this. If that is something that's a reasonable proposition now, like if you were to say that 2 months ago, people would be like, okay, that's ridiculous. No one believes that. Now millions of people believe it. And so, I maybe that's some of what Tucker Carlson's been talking about, and some other people have been speaking, is that the Overton window has been moved right now to what is acceptable. And if that's just a danger. If people don't speak up and talk about this, then everyone's going to figure that that's normal. Oh, okay.
Marcus, you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot depends on how the lines of debate are defined. Because the polling data is encouraging if you define what is the central issue. The president does very well on economic issues. What we've seen with the sort of variety of issues that have taken place in the last month is that the how shall I say, the lines of debate have changed dramatically away from that.
Absolutely.
Right. You know, and the thing here too about all this, I mean, it's really hard for me to compare 2016 polls to 2020 polls at this point in time. We have a very different world right now. I mean, we have been in this quarantine lockdown situation. I feel that the polls that are being taken now are really largely driven by what the people feel that the media narrative has been. And that media narrative has been extremely anti-Trump, very, very negative. And so that I think the results are that way. If I were Joe Biden's team, I wouldn't get too overconfident about these numbers in the swing states or the national numbers yet, because we're not really getting a chance to see Donald Trump and Joe Biden out there talking to the people and getting out the issues and doing that. And until that point, I think the polls really right now, they're a reference point, but they're not necessarily going to reflect what's happening now. We really need to see a campaign. You know, we're 130 days away from the election. We still have time, but we've got to get these guys out there. I mean, you know, President Trump did go out, right? He went to Tulsa last week, spoke to a bunch of people. You know, I don't know. I mean, Marcus, I mean, for example, do you believe the narrative, you know, the stories there that the K-pop and the TikTok crowd basically kind of hacked it and creating this situation where few people showed up?
But here's the thing, Don. They still had 6,400 people came out to see the president. And comparing that to the Joe Biden rally they had earlier that week, I think the president had...
Jordan, that's in comparison. It's whether it's the question he was asking, though, was that did they have an effect? I think there was... I believe the campaign claimed it was something like 10,000 fraudulent signups that they quickly figured out. I would guess that the actual numbers are probably more than Marcus, that, but it's not. But it's a combination of things. It's the campaign was saying that really it was the media sort of hyping up both the danger from rioters and the day before, you know, curfew being installed. Is like, well, if I want to go and bring, if I'm older and maybe in one of the higher risk groups, or I want to bring my family, I'm not going to bring my family to that. I don't want to bring my family to that. And so that was probably the bigger issue. However, saying that AOC putting out that the TikTokers got him and the K-pop, in some sense it's a way to try to frame it that, well, if you like TikTok, then you have to be against Trump. And so
TikTok, is that run by the People's Republic of China?
TikTok
exactly.
Took over for Vine.
Yeah.
And one of the stories I was hearing, I mean, you mentioned the curfew, was that people had been camped out days in advance. You know, it's like a rock concert. You want to get close in. You want to be up there front. But the curfew apparently basically forced them to pick up, you know, their camp and move, which means is that by the time that they were allowed to actually sit in place, you know, maybe some of them got discouraged and maybe they went back home. Now, the flip side of this, which, you know, I got hit on Periscope when I said I called it a success when you look at the overall picture, was that when you looked at the digital side of things, the Trump campaign said they had 4 million views across their digital channels, including about 2.5 million on the kind of the pre-campaign show. There were 2.1 million viewers on Fox's YouTube stream, 580,000 viewers on Fox Business Network's YouTube stream, and 7.7 million. This is the big number. 7.7 million viewers on Fox News following on Saturday, setting an all-time record for Fox News on Saturday for viewership. And so if you take it in totality, that was a humongous success. People just said, "Oh, hey, look, I can watch this from home." You know, if you had a social distancing issue, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, we live in a world, especially today, that you can't just, you know, like the numbers online, they matter more than necessarily the numbers of people who are there.
And here's also another thing is they talk about the lack of people that showed up, but here's the thing, this was the first rally, and the fact that the television numbers, the digital numbers were through the roof. I mean, nobody's getting these kind of numbers. Even our show isn't getting numbers like that.
But I will definitely be interested in seeing the polls after.
Going back to the polls, remember John Kerry in 2004? We've seen this movie. John Kerry was supposed to be the president in 2004. And we saw, we woke, election night ended relatively early, and President Bush won re-election. And I think this election, I think it's going to be similar to 2004, as in, the Democrats are going to go in very happy, and they're going to, I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be, but I think the president is going to get the popular vote maybe this time by eking it through, but he might get the popular vote as well.
I think my hope is that that's the case. I think that the danger is for us and for the people trying to get Biden elected who don't make any sense, is that if you're lulled into sort of a sense of security, that's a problem, because and
remember, we haven't seen Joe Biden,
but it could go many ways.
We haven't seen Joe Biden on vacation on his what do you call it? It wasn't a sailboat. We haven't seen Joe on a sailboat like we saw John Kerry back in 2004.
That sailboat. It was anyway.
All right, Don.
Well, I mean, and so one of the things I want to ask here, because this is something I've been kind of struggling with, is that for President Trump, what is the message? What's the catchphrase? I mean, if you go back to 2016, what a great theme, make America great again, or build the wall. I mean, those things I think were extremely effective. What's the message in 2020, considering everything that's been going on?
Well, it's make America great again. Like the Tulsa rally, they did not have keep America great. It had make America great again.
And I don't know if you've seen the president's commercial that he's doing right now, how the economy's coming back. The guy who's responsible for building this economy is not who you want to lead us out of this crisis. Right. It's kind of like...
and that's precisely the way, if they can frame the debate along those lines.
I think the fact that he's bringing manufacturing back to America, I mean, you've got... manufacturing coming back. You see Hummer is coming back to America. It's going to be an all-electric division to rival Tesla, Marcus. Hummer is going to be part of the General Motors under GMC's nameplate. It'll be GMC Hummer, and their Hummers are going to be all electric, and they'll be made here in America.
So we're going to see when we resume the show here in the house. Are you going to be driving over an electric Hummer sometime?
No. My Yukon. I actually got a thing today. Get the 2021 Yukon. It looks sweet, and I am very tempted to pick up a 2021.
So now while we're on elections, I do. We just had some primaries, and I think some of you might have some opinions about these primaries that took place, because AOC had a primary. Michelle Caruso Cabrera challenged her, and several others, and AOC just kind of wiped the mat with that. She won big time with that. But here's the thing: is that Elliot Engel, he got crushed.
Yeah.
I mean, and is this showing that the kind of the progressive wing, is exerting more strength? We're going to see more of the AOC, the squad, going to expand over time.
Okay, well. First of all, as a Jewish person, that's horrifying to think about, because these people are very anti-Jew, they're all pro-BDS, pro-Palestine, but I'm not going to go into that now. They are. But I was having a conversation with my dad about this, and he said, this is a good thing. And I said, how do you figure? He said, because if the right can make the argument that the left is being run by radical, progressive leftists, it makes it very easy to get people to vote for more moderate Republicans.
And here's the thing with the AOC, and I tell you, the Democratic Party, Joe Lieberman, Zell Miller would not be welcome in today's Democrat Party, or Pat Moynihan or Scoop Jackson. Depending what day of the week, Bill Bradley and Sam Nunn wouldn't be welcome.
The Democrats have pretty much cleaned out the blue dog Democrats.
Yeah, that's
right.
They're long gone.
I think there's only there's one left. I'm trying to think.
We're not even. But here's the thing: in these New York primaries, we're not even talking about clearing out, centrist Democrats. Elliot Engel and Carolyn Maloney got less than 50% of the vote.
Yeah, I mean, and that is not over yet, right? I
And
mean,
that's not over. There's like 100,000 votes still to be counted and absentees. And although she says she had an absentee ballot program with that many votes, they must have both had a pretty good absentee program. But you have in what are very strongly Democratic districts, unfortunately.
And Maloney's fairly. She's no blue dog Democrat.
She is no blue dog Democrat. No, not at all. That's the point.
They can be, and
right.
And she's if she loses, that's going to be like look out, folks like Dutch Ruppersberger in Maryland.
I think it is progressives are rising. The far left is taking over a lot of the infrastructure of the Democrats, and Chuck Schumer has to look out for AOC in 2022. But another thing something that I saw was that I believe AOC got 54,000 phone calls or voter contacts the day before the election. So that the ability to rally this many people focused on one race that would come out and support her, I think has an impact. Whether you can do that in a general or not, it's one of those things. It's like, this wasn't a special election. It was, just the normal primary, but that can be something when you can focus a huge support base from outside the district on one race. I think that sort of assured the victory for AOC.
Yeah, but as we were talking about, we saw it in a number of primaries in New York at the same time. So
yeah. But I mean, that number, because the AOC had at least a fairly plausible or possibly strong challenger, a local New York City news person, like former news person. That, but when you have the ability to focus on one district, that there's multiple issues. So is what the point I'm making, and how this would translate into the general is, if the Democrats or the leftist interest groups can have something where they're contacting enough people in the swing states directly, that can be a problem. And then in all the assumptions that we make about, it's just going to be easy, the silent majority will come in. We can't rest on that. That's not.
No, we can't.
It's a danger.
Here's the thing about New York City. A lot of those seats are held by They all live on Upper East Side Manhattan liberals. And I think the AOC who.
Well, that's not her district.
No. But what I'm saying is, like Major Owens, he didn't live in his district. He lived. Where did he live? He lived up in Midtown. He lived in that area. He lived not too far from where our old friend Claudette Hale lived.
Actually, Yvette Clarke had a very tight primary as well.
Yeah, and
we're really getting into the weeds here.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
So let me just ask a question here, though, because I want to know or find out, from Mark and others, in terms of this election. I mean, what we've been seeing in the primaries, thanks to COVID, is a lot of absentee ballots and mail-in ballot type of things like this, which is in some of these races means is that we don't know who the winner is, and we will not know who the winner is for potentially weeks. Is this going to be what we're going to see, our precursor in November? Is this going to just, how long will it be for some, how many elections might get affected in November nationwide?
I think November, we have to have an honestly, we have to have an in-person election. We can't do this mail-in nonsense. No, it's not. And let me tell you something. If you're too afraid to vote, too afraid to go out and vote, stay home. I don't care, quite frankly.
But Dwight, even be that as it may, we certainly should have had more voting places in the Maryland primary. There will be a lot more absentee ballots out this year. We in Maryland have a, quote, no-fault absentee ballot law. Mm-hmm. So anybody who wants it can get it. There's really nothing to stop them. somebody requesting that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there'll be a lot more absentee ballots.
They can do absentee, but I think we should have you go to the polls, you vote. Let's bring those, let's do those machines. I mean, we could dust off those old punch card machines that we used to have.
All true, but Don's question was, is it gonna take longer? And if there's a lot more absentee ballots, paper ballots, there's a lot, which is also has its own set of potential fraud. I mean, there's a lot of questions that need to be addressed.
I feel like there's going to be 100 million. I feel like there are going to be enough states such that we're going to have absentee ballots or mail-in ballots sent to like half the population of the United States, which is going to be. I mean, I can't see how
I might not stay awake that night because you're not going to get your answer that night.
Well, what about Trump? He's trying to kind of plant that seed already, saying that this could be a rigged election in essence because of the potential of all these mail-in or absentee ballots. Does the rest of the panel, do you kind of agree with that? Yes or no in between?
I think so, but also I think it's just like we saw how badly it went in Maryland. We saw what the lines looked like if they were trying with less polling places. I mean, I think people would rather go show up, flip a couple of switches and leave and go back to their lives instead of there's so much frustration I've seen with people saying, my ballot still says received. And, there's so much uncertainty there that I think a lot of people on both sides of the aisle would rather just go and vote.
Let me just bring in some of the experience I had this week with paying my county property taxes. And we found out, basically, we found out that I was doing it for a mom.
Why are you paying him now?
What's
up
with
that?
Okay,
I thought it was September and December.
Okay. The reason I was paying him, this is basically for my mom. I was doing this. I don't pay mine to the last day actually, but first, I go in there. It shows that she owes money, right? And then I go back and I go, "Oh, mom, did you forget to pay?" And then I talk to my brother. He said he paid. So, and then I paid. He paid. So now the county owes us almost like $5,000 now in taxes because their online system is so out of whack. You go there and look, it shows you still, even if you paid your taxes, it still shows you owed taxes. And then that's how people accidentally pay twice and 3 times sometimes.
All right. Well, I want to get ready.
Could be the way they solve their financial shortfall.
I think is Mark Elrick's.
This could be a secret.
My brother.
All right. One last quick thing before we get to the end of the show and make our final comments.
Sure.
And I wanted this one because we've got the lawyer on the program, which is we have a student at Harvard Law who
not
is
Maryland. No, let me just say
Harvard's not in Maryland.
Yeah.
Are you barred in Massachusetts, Mark?
So we have a student at Harvard Law, and he's suing Harvard Law because of the switch to online classes and everything, and he's calling but Harvard Law is still going to charge them the same tuition and fees. And as I understand it too, he also lives in California, and he also complained that 8 o'clock classes mean that he has to participate at 5 a.m. So does he have a case? Is this legitimate or is it not? I mean, what are people paying for with a Harvard Law degree or Harvard going to Harvard Law?
Well, I think they actually, with Harvard, you probably have a weaker case because that's a nice brand name. But listen, for a lot of schools of higher education, the prospect of more distance learning is really going to kind of change the value proposition for that.
Exactly.
Pick a school that you really aren't as familiar with. Again, not a brand name like Harvard. It really becomes questionable whether or not it makes sense when you can also do online courses and there are resources that are available where you can pick up a substantial number of credits and transfer them in.
You could go to University of Baltimore Law, and there's a lot of famous Maryland governors that have their law degrees from University of Baltimore.
I feel like this more applies to undergrad, but a lot of students, what you're really paying for and looking for in a school, especially when you go to tour, is that college experience. Why do you pick a state school over a school of, a school like University of Maryland with a big campus and a football team, and it's
better parties.
That's what students are looking for when
That's
they're
really
looking at schools. And if you're not there with your friends, living in a dorm, getting arrested for underage drinking, what are you paying for?
But most students don't want to live at home for 4 years.
Exactly. No, they want to get out and see the world.
And the options that we're talking about are not 4 years of online education. We're talking about being able to take a substantial number of online courses and reduce the tuition bill. You begin to do a little of that for a lot of smaller schools, and that's going to really affect their bottom line.
It's going to change the face of education for sure. And then the other thing I didn't even think about until just now is like so many students I would say for the foreseeable future are going to miss out on the opportunity to study abroad because they're not going to want to keep,
Exactly.
Right now we're not sure where the EU stands with letting US citizens travel back to Europe. So who knows what colleges are going to look like moving forward, but it is 5-2. So we need to move into final thoughts. Let's start with Dwight today. Which could be, I might regret that.
But,
you will regret that.
I got two final thoughts. Number one, a real nice one. When I was at GW, it was the number one party school in the country.
That's not the case.
No, it was never the case.
It was. Yes, it was.
That was no.
Yes.
No.
It could not.
I will show you the numbers, Mark.
Sorry?
And then I'll show you the number. When I was at Maryland was the number one party school in the country. Just saying.
So what he's trying to say is the party is where Dwight Patel is.
That's apparently some correlation here. I don't quite understand.
My real final thoughts is let's go back to one of our first wins in the war against the commies. Back in 1948, we started the Berlin Airlift, where the commies were trying to choke West Berlin by cutting off their electricity and all that. And let's, maybe we could, I hate the communists more than anyone else probably, but can we apply that to Chapistan and cut off their water and electricity and see if, see how long they last?
We're going to take that as a rhetorical question.
They're closing down anyway, so.
Yeah. All right, Marcus.
Well, I would like to say that and Ryan isn't here at the moment, but the prediction about Joe Biden not being the nominee, it's at this, he's getting increasingly being in a disaster. Like the web ad that he has that comes up on YouTube, like he's stumbling through it. He doesn't they have subtitles on him because you don't understand what he's saying, and what he said wasn't actually what was on the subtitle. He actually stumbled through it. So he's a disaster. However, the Democrats canceled their convention, or their convention's going to be a virtual one. So the ability to have that sort of moment to sort of overthrow him or choose somebody else, it's gone. So
I hope you didn't have money on that, Marcus.
Yeah. No, I didn't.
And Marcus, Joe is in that high risk category. So it's, I can applaud the Democrats for not doing a in-person convention. A lot of their members, are like Bernie Sanders, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. They're on that high risk category.
You're so concerned.
All right, Mark.
So we've talked about this already on the show, the prospect of doing virtual learning. This is an opportunity here in Maryland where Maryland is unfortunately one of the states where charter online or virtual education charter schools are not available. 30 states in the union do provide that. This is an opportunity to open that up. There's sort of some wiggle room in the guidance that the State Department of Education offered. They're willing to look at various providers. This is a great opportunity that we need in this circumstance to become more experimental, to take a look and give more opportunities to parents to choose online charter schools as one of their options for the fall.
100% agree. Don.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to the cancel culture a little bit, and the very idea that's being floated around now, or the movement to change the national anthem. I'm just really getting sick and tired of all of these things that we're seeing. It's like there's nothing anybody did in history now, it seems, that it cannot be canceled or attempted to be canceled. And this is ridiculous. This is America. We got to put a stop to this.
You don't want "Imagine" by John Lennon to be our national anthem? That's,
So
I feel like it's such a downer to sing at a baseball game.
My question to you guys is, will we have to change the name Washington, D.C. before we change the name Redskins?
Flavortown, D.C.
But here, what's funny is I'm surprised nobody's brought up. I know this is probably going to come up at the next legislative session. They're going to try and get rid of the Maryland state song.
Well, I support that.
It is a great song.
I know it's not.
Okay, it's 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock, and I get a final thought too. So.
Go, Jackie.
Okay.
Mine is also on cancel culture. It's just an observation. The Simpsons has come out today saying that they will no longer allow white people to voice non-white characters. I would like to point out that all of the quote-unquote white characters on The Simpsons are yellow. I rest my case.
Hey, so can non-whites voice white characters?
Probably.
But by the way, I'm offended by that. I think Apu, the guy that does Apu, is a great actor. He does the Indian accent better than I can do. He's
it's a cartoon, don't you?
And a lot of Indians,
Right? How will they know they're voice actors?
And here's a lot of Indians like the character Apu. He is living the American dream. He came over from someplace in India, and he came as an engineer, but he owns the Quickie Martin. He's living La Vida Loca now.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you everybody for tuning in. Have a great week leading up to the 4th of July. We will see you.